Hi, and welcome to The Innovator, where we talk about accountable innovation in higher education. I'm your host, Wesley Smith, and today's conversation is with Keith Hauk. Keith serves as the Associate Vice President of Stateside Military Operations at the University of Maryland Global Campus. He also has 3 decades of service in the Army. We have Keith on today to help us understand how higher education can best serve this unique subset of working learners. That is, the men and women of the United States military. Let's get right to the conversation. Hey, good to see you, Keith. Last time we spoke, you were in Tokyo. Where are you today?
Today I'm working from home in Ellicott City, Maryland, outside of Baltimore.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. I hope your trip was successful in Tokyo. I know that UMGC has representatives abroad on a very, very regular basis. Those who work in Maryland or based in Maryland, and then I assume you have personnel all over the world in the process of educating the men and women in the military. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Our talking point that we like to use is globally we are in 185 plus locations. And that includes continental United States, Hawaii, the Pacific Rim, and then Europe and the Middle East. So 185 plus locations scattered across the globe in those different areas.
Yeah. I mean, there are a lot of institutions that have global in their name, but I don't know if there are any institutions that have that kind of a footprint actually in the world.
No, I don't think there are. There's other schools at those locations. But I think, we are the one constant when you look across all of those different areas around the world. We are the one constant when it comes to military students and family members at those different locations.
Yeah. Well, hey, we're going to get into a couple issues with education and the military. Before we get into those questions, Keith, will you just give me some quick background on your military experience and your expertise? How did you come to the position that you're in now at UMGC? And just give us and our listeners a little bit of insight into your experience.
So I served 30 years in the Army. I was an infantryman, so you can, just the normal kind of jobs you would associate with that military occupational specialty. But when I was transitioning out, I wanted to find a different way to serve. I had a lot of opportunities, but I was drawn to higher education because of the ability to really engage on a personal level with service members, with veterans that were trying to pursue their education beyond high school. And it really is a way to help them better and enrich their lives. Because it's a well-known fact, one of the greatest ways to climb the economic ladder, so to speak, is pursuing higher education and serving in the military. And I saw this as just a great opportunity to kind of bring those two together while still serving my brothers and sisters that are still in uniform.
Yeah. This is fantastic. And what you're doing right now is a huge benefit to your past colleagues, your current colleagues, and future colleagues in the military. Let's talk a little bit about one of the big focuses of the President's Forum, which is on working learners. Now, this is a particular subset of working learners, the men and women who are serving in the United States Armed Forces. But we've talked a little bit recently about this program of tuition assistance. Can you tell us a little bit about the program? So, tell even beginning listeners what tuition assistance is and what it's designed for. But specifically, Keith, I want to know, what does this mean for recruitment in the U.S. military?
So tuition assistance is a benefit provided to service members by the Department of Defense. The Department of Defense manages the overall program, and then it's actually implemented by the individual military services, Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and so on. But it is intended to allow service members to pursue voluntary off-duty education. So, that can be anything from an associate's degree all the way up to a master's degree. And then what it does is it affords them up to $4,500 a year and $250 per credit hour for service members to go out and pursue higher education. They do it in their off-duty time, but that's what the benefit is intended to do. In my experience, like I said, I served 30 years in the military. In my experience, it is a tremendous recruitment tool for military service. When you look at any one of a number of surveys that the military has done or that other organizations have done, whether it's the American Council on Education, Syracuse University through their institute that they have up there for veterans and military families, one of the top two reasons that young people always give for military service is higher education. They want to use military service as that springboard to go pursue higher education. Certainly the VA benefits that they get after service is a part of that, what they get through the GI Bill. But while they are in service, tuition assistance is the primary means by which they fulfill that goal of pursuing higher education.
I mean, I would assume that this is one of the great ways for higher education as well to reach into underserved populations, traditionally underserved populations who may be drawn to the military as a path towards opportunity in the first place. And then, you start with military service and you build onto that with higher education. Does that sound like a path that you've seen?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And we see that within the demographics of our own student population at UMGC. And I know our sister institutions that also work heavily in this market. They see the same thing. It is typically more skewed towards first time ever going to college students that are using tuition assistance in the military because typically they come from more diverse backgrounds. Sometimes those backgrounds are more economically disadvantaged. So, in terms of what those students look like that come to us in the military, for the vast majority of them, not only is this their first experience with college, they're the first person in their family to start to have this experience with college.
Right. Well, okay, so this tuition assistance benefit, critical to recruitment issues and also critical to providing pathways to opportunity for the men and women who serve our country. Let's talk about tuition assistance specifically. I believe that the last time tuition assistance was adjusted to keep pace with inflation was, I want to say, Keith, it was 2002. Does that
2002?
Sound correct?
That's correct.
So tell us about what has happened from 2002, 21 years, almost 22 years later. What does that tuition assistance look like today?
Well, I mean, at its essence, since the benefit has remained from a financial perspective, the benefit has remained relatively unchanged since 2002. We all know what the cost growth has looked like in higher education. So, obviously tuition assistance has not kept up with that. But, to me, the real impact on students is it really starts to affect that rate of pursuit, in terms of how quickly can they pursue that degree. Obviously, when you're in the military, your military duties, responsibilities, that all comes first. But as you start to have time to devote towards pursuing your education while you're in the military, you want to optimize that time. You want to pursue it as quickly as you possibly can. Quite frankly, given the fact that the benefit has remained stagnant in terms of how much is covered, it's remained stagnant since 2002, and costs in higher education have continued to escalate. It's slowed the rate at which military service members, when they have the time, can pursue that degree.
And you've seen that personally. You've seen men and women in the military looking down at their degree and saying, "Okay, I want this. Unfortunately, I've got to spread this out over multiple years, as opposed to just knocking it all out right now because my tuition assistance benefit doesn't cover it."
Yeah, and there is the military aspect of that in terms of I can only go so fast given my military duties.
Right.
But in a lot of cases, they're able to go faster than the 16 to 18 credit hours that you can pursue at $250 a credit hour, per year.
Right.
So and I've personally talked to hundreds of students in my 9 years at UMGC where military students have told me, I want to go faster, but tuition assistance is capped at whatever it is. Now, we try to work with those students, as a lot of institutions do, to try to find grant-based aid or scholarships or things like that. But at the end of the day, that capped tuition rate essentially acts as a governor in terms of how fast they can pursue that degree.
Right. Yeah, that's very interesting. Okay, so, it seems like the solution may be simple, but tell us how we can better serve the members of the military who are taking advantage of tuition assistance. What does the future look like? What does the policy need to change? How does it need to change?
So I do think from a policy perspective, two things. I mean, I do think the overall cap needs to be raised. As I mentioned, it's capped at $4,500 per year, and then the per credit hour cap is established at $250 per credit hour. I really think you have to adjust both, in my opinion.
Okay.
Because just raising the cap from $250 to $300 per credit hour without raising that overall $4,500 cap, that doesn't adjust anybody's buying power. But I think both need to adjust, and obviously it'll be a decision for, Congress and the department to figure out how much and all that. But I do think it needs to get above $4,500 per credit hour, and that tuition, that per credit hour cap also needs to adjust higher.
Right. That makes sense. And that allows rate of pursuit to keep pace with interests of the men and women who are pursuing that higher education, and allows them to be more effective in credentialing up and being prepared for additional opportunities.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. All right. This has been very helpful. Thanks for the 101 on this. We will, I'm sure, be back in touch as we work through this at the President's Forum. Keith, thanks for making time to join us. We appreciate your expertise. And more importantly, we love your expertise, but thanks for your service, your decades of service to the country.
Well, Wes, thank you. I've been doing this now for the better part of 4 years between UMGC and the military. You don't do something that long unless you really, truly love it. And I do.
Very true. Very true. Well, thanks for being with us.
Okay. Thanks, Wes. Take care.